Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 16 running back rankings, and we've got a whole lot to get through, so incredibly quickly, I will be going live quite a bit more than focusing on rankings and videos over the next couple of weeks for your championship games in Week 17, and for some of you in Week 18. So, with that's in large part because of the holidays and everything coming around. So that's that. I don't have the exact schedule to give you, but I'm just going to be going live as much as I really can, as much as makes sense in my opinion. And with that, on to the first round of the rankings. You can see my projections up on the screen. The order that we are going through them, of course, is the rankings. These are subject to change as the week goes along, but I do put a good amount of effort to try to get this pretty darn set as quickly as possible. But, of course, we'll take in more information throughout the week and react, including injury information, etc. So, that's that. Let's get to this. We got my first tier here. Running backs 1 through 11 includes Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Chase Brown in at running back 3, followed by Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, James Conner in here, Kyren Williams that low, Joe Mixon this low, James Cook making it in here after last week. Great stuff. James Conner is a must start this week going up against Carolina Panthers. Just wanted to highlight that, as well as highlighting, just real quick off the top of my head, I remember this about James Cook, a little bit of concern in this matchup against New England, and you can see that come through in the floor. However, as you can see with the ceiling there in that projection, other factors overcome that little bit of concern. Is really the concern is the receiving upside of this game for James Cook against New England, but it's not a big enough concern. He's still a must start in this matchup. That's going to bring us on to this second tier. However, before we get that, let's go over my loves and my fades. These are players that will be highlighted in green and red for my loves and fades. It's just like starts and sits that other experts use in terms of terminology. I did not cover how I did with my receivers. It was a mixed bag this week with the receivers. I got maybe 4 out of 6 correct or something like that. A couple not correct. I think I swept with my my fades. I think I got all 3 killed, pretty much killed it there, and then my loves might have gone 1 for 2, or maybe even 2 and 1 there or something. I did okay. Did well enough. And same with the running backs. Actually, I swept it with the running backs. My loves were Rico Dowdle, Aaron Jones, running backs 12 and 7 respectively, and my fades were Tyrone Tracy and DeAndre Swift, running backs 45 and 27 respectively. So that all worked out. Hopefully we can continue this upwards trend compared to a couple of weeks ago with my loves and my fades. That's going to bring us on to my running back 12 with Isaac Grendo, followed by Aaron Jones, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, and at running back 16 we do have Bucky Irving. Aaron Jones here going up against Seattle. I feel like I'm constantly having to highlight and defend Aaron Jones down the stretch of the season here. He has scored 15 and a half or more fantasy points 3 out of the past 4 games. He scored over 10 fantasy points in all but 4 matchups. His ceiling is not the highest, but in good matchups, he pretty much does not upset. In all matchups, he pretty much has not upset over the course of the season. A couple of low-scoring games, but that will happen to every running back. Seattle is largely an average matchup on the season, including for receiving backs, but they are tied for 5th most yards per carry to running backs. Aaron Jones works especially well when he's given a little bit of space to work through. Once he breaks through to that second level, he can be deadly. So look for a couple of those pop runs from Aaron Jones in this matchup. And then we've got Rico Dowdle going up against Tampa Bay. Once again, Rico gets a good matchup. Fire him back up yet again down the stretch here. Definitely one of those season winner types here with Rico Dowdle late in the season. Then we've got my third tier goes from running back 17 down to running back 23, it appears, with Breece Hall kicking this tier off, followed by Brian Robinson Jr., Jonathan Taylor, Ken Walker, Tyrone Tracy, Rashad White, Tony Pollard. As you can see, a lot to talk about. That's why I'm going fast, and I'll probably end up making this video quicker than other videos where I go through less. But hey, that's how it is. Breece Hall here at running back 17. I know that this feels a little bit high for Breece Hall here this week, but the Rams are an average matchup. When I look at the players that I have ranked directly behind Breece Hall, the Brian Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Ken Walker, I see much tougher matchups in Tennessee, Philadelphia, and Minnesota. Are those still the 3 behind? Okay, I didn't know if maybe I changed my rankings a little bit since writing that down. But yes, those 3 matchups, much, much tougher than Breece Hall's matchup. And as you can see in the projections, Breece Hall's right in the mix here with these other guys. Then we've got Brian Robinson going up against Philadelphia. This also may feel a touch high when you see that JT and Ken Walker, the third, are ranked directly behind him. But I am banking on Brian Robinson's talent coming through in a need matchup. And what I mean is that the Washington Commanders, I think, need him to show up and will give him a chance to show up. I think that he is the X factor when it comes to upsetting Philadelphia, keeping the ball out of that offense's hands, and just breaking through against this defense that I don't know that they'll be able to do so much through the air or so much through Jaden Daniels' rushing attack on his own. Washington needs to establish the run early and often, and I mean the traditional run here with Brian Robinson. So I'm hoping that that's what they will try to do, and if they do it successfully, then Brian Robinson obviously could have a good day, because that's why it would be successful. Then we've got Jonathan Taylor going up against Tennessee. Tennessee is tied for the 4th fewest yards per carry allowed. Jonathan Taylor, of course, his specialty is on the ground, so that's not, it's a matchup of strengths there against the other. Jonathan Taylor not having the best season ever, especially as of late, and it's a below average receptions matchup against running backs as well, so there's not like that silver lining for Jonathan Taylor, who's really doesn't excel in that area anyways. So he's going to have to bring it in a tough matchup this week against Tennessee. And, not too different of a story here with Kenneth Walker going up against Minnesota, except if you thought that was a tough matchup for JT against Tennessee, then it's even worse here for Ken Walker, which is why I have him ranked behind him. Minnesota is the 3rd worst running back matchup on the season in terms of fantasy points allowed. That will bring us to my running back 21, who is my first love of the week on this list, Tyrone Tracy, coming off of a couple of bad weeks. Hey, he was my fade last week, right? So things are looking a little bit different this week against Atlanta. I'm not ultra confident in this coming through, but I am hopeful and confident in this working. Atlanta's not a particularly great matchup for running backs. That's why I'm not ultra confident. They're average in terms of yards per carry, and they're below average to poor in terms of fantasy points allowed. So what is it that's getting me excited here? Well, as you can see with the ceiling there, that 13-point ceiling, a little bit higher than a lot of the guys that are above him and below him, there is an area where Tyrone Tracy's strengths match up against Atlanta's weakness as a defense against running backs. Atlanta is ranked tied for 1st in receptions allowed to the running back position. Tyrone Tracy, a previous wide receiver just 2 years ago in college football, now a running back, can definitely catch the ball and do things with it once it's in his hands. 2 weeks ago, we tried to attack a matchup where the defense's weakness was Tyrone Tracy's weakness as well. And we were hoping that Tyrone Tracy could overcome his own weaknesses in a good matchup for that. That was New Orleans, allowing a lot of yards per carry. That didn't come true. But maybe New York will say, hey, we see a strength on a weakness here. We see the New York Giants, we see Tyrone Tracy's strength as a receiving back up against a weakness for this Atlanta defense against receiving backs. Let's take advantage of that and throw the ball to Tyrone Tracy a bunch, generate some plays for him, give him a chance to break out in some open space, where, once again, that's a weakness for this Atlanta defense. I like it. Let's get it. Hopefully, whoever's in at quarterback can get the ball out there to Tyrone Tracy without it getting knocked down before it gets there, or inaccurate throws, etc. Then we've got Tony Pollard going up against Indianapolis, and I'm hearing some people talk about the end of Pollard with his down performance last week. This feels mostly reactionary to me. Looking at his snap shares, not a whole lot stands out as different. Some does, we'll get to that. Tony Pollard was in on 19 rushing snaps last week. His season average is 19.5 rushing snaps per game. He had 17 rushing attempts last week. His season average is 16.5 rushing attempts. These are not numbers that are going down or anything like that, like I feel some of the fantasy world is leading you to believe, the way that they're talking about Tony Pollard. What is different is his usage in the passing game, which definitely hurts his ranking, his projections here. And I do have my projections with that in mind. I've cut his receiving work in half, as he is now on the field on receiving downs half as much as his season average was. That will bring us on to this next tier of running backs from running back 24 through 28. I've got Ramondre Stevenson, followed by Jerome Ford, Isaiah Pacheco, Najee Harris, and DeAndre Swift to wrap this tier up. And you can see my next love is right at the top of this tier, and Ramondre Stevenson going up against Buffalo. And I just wrote, oh my gosh, and a little note to myself to take some heavy breaths here. Woosah, right? Okay, are we going to really start Ramondre Stevenson? Well, hopefully not. Hopefully we can have some better running backs for the championship than the 24th ranked running back, but maybe. Buffalo is a dream matchup for good receiving backs, and Ramondre is a good receiving back. They also allow the third most fantasy points to running backs in general. It's a good running back matchup against Buffalo. My primary concern here, outside the fact that it's New England's Ramondre Stevenson, he's tough to trust, is that Ramondre is coming off of one of his lowest usage games in the receiving aspect of the game for his team. So I'm also going to have Antonio Gibson higher up in my rankings than normal this week, as maybe he's the guy who will take the most advantage of this aspect against Buffalo. I'm still not incredibly down, even if Ramondre Stevenson's passing work isn't anything revolutionary in this game. He could still end up having a decent day against Buffalo. Then we've got Isaiah Pacheco, my first fade, and you can see we've just got my 3 fades here right in a row, pushing them all back to my running backs 26 through 28. And for Isaiah Pacheco, Houston, the team that they're going up against, is the 4th worst running back matchup, and they're especially stodgy on the ground, only allowing 4 yards per carry. Then we've got Najee Harris going up against Baltimore. Baltimore allows the least yards per carry on the ground at 3.4 yards per carry. There is a little upside in this receiving game in this matchup, but it's more likely that Jaylen Warren would be the one to take advantage of that than it is that Najee will be the one to take advantage of that. But still, something where maybe Najee can get us an extra 1.5 on top. Hey, that goes from 8.5 to 10 points all of a sudden. The points do add up, and so maybe there's a little silver lining there for Najee. And the biggest silver lining, however, aside from that, for me, is that if George Pickens is not playing yet again this week, I think that Pittsburgh has to make an attempt to absolutely establish a ground attack. They just do not have the receiving weapons. Even in this, what is at this point in the season an average matchup against Baltimore, they've tightened up their passing game a little bit. They've gotten a little better in that secondary. But even in what's been on the season a good receiving matchup, I think Pittsburgh really needs to focus on trying to establish that ground game. They're not going to be able to keep up with Baltimore otherwise, I don't think, if they are going 3 and out too often. And then we got DeAndre Swift here, running back 28, going up against Detroit. Detroit is obviously stout on the ground. Everybody knows that. They've also been the 3rd worst team to attack with receiving backs, only allowing 3.3 receptions per game to the running back position, and those numbers are, those bottom 3 numbers are significantly lower than even I think 4th or 5th on that list. That's a low number. The bright side here is that Detroit has suffered more injuries to their front 7. That's not a bright side overall. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm saying for DeAndre Swift in terms of fantasy football, there is that silver lining yet again with a couple of more injuries to this Detroit defense that has suffered injuries since preseason, since the season didn't even start. It's just been ridiculous for them. They've really come through. They've had great depth. They've been able to still be very good at these things that the front 7 is supposed to do. However, maybe we've reached a point where they no longer have the depth to maintain this, I don't want to call it elite performance, but these good outcomes in terms especially of stopping the run for DeAndre Swift. Maybe he finds some seams here against Detroit this week. I'm still not betting on it, obviously, but that is the silver lining. Let's move on to the rest of my running backs. So usually I might even stop it there, but first of all, you can see currently I'm not ranking Alvin Kamara, Dameon Pierce, Dario Ogunbowale. They're just kind of sitting there waiting to make sure that Joe Mixon is healthy. Otherwise, they can come in at any point. So my running backs 29 through 39. This is 2 tiers of running backs, a couple of more guys that we want to highlight, and that's why we're talking about these guys this week. Also, because I know some of us are in situations where even that we've gotten to this point in the season, our running back 2 recently maybe not performing, maybe injured, etc. So Travis Etienne, my running back 29, followed by Kendre Miller, Amir Abdullah, Javonte Williams, Craig Reynolds. That's that tier. The next tier kicks off at running back 34 with Tyler Algier, Tank Bigsby, Jalen Warren, Tyjae Spears, Antonio Gibson, and Alexander Madison. All right, we're hitting a good time here. Let's see if we can't finish this off strongly. We're going to start off with Craig Reynolds, my second love of the week. And in 2023, Craig Reynolds pitched? Craig Reynolds, what term was I trying to think of? He came in, he pitched in during weeks 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8, of which all those weeks either Gibbs or Montgomery was not playing in those games. During those games, he has an average of 7 to 8 carries, averages 35 yards, gets 4 receptions for a total of 10 yards on average. Gets 4 receptions total, average of 10 yards on average. All right, I apologize. You'll see a cut there. I did my math a little bit wrong here, so that does change things a little bit with this analysis. But I'm still want to point out Craig Reynolds here. At the end of the day, he got a touchdown in there too. He averaged 6.2 fantasy points is what that would kind of come out to. And it's a little bit up and down, too, in terms of his usage throughout those games. One of them, he only gets like 3 carries, So there were other factors going on here, and I will talk a little bit more about factors this year compared to last year at that point in time in the season. But at the end of the day, 6.2 fantasy points, it doesn't sound great. This is half PPR, by the way. But that is just outside of being like flex-worthy. 7.2 I had as flex-worthy. 7.2 would have been the running back 33 in Week 15. This is only 6.2. That's a little bit lower. It's still going to be like running back 37, 38. Actually, I have it right here. Yeah, look at that. 37 it would have been right there. So still borderline flex-worthy usage, and in reality is that he'll either get a touchdown, which I give him, fractions of a point there, or not. And if he gets that touchdown, he's a definite RB2. If he doesn't, he ends with, around 6 fantasy points, and I'm going to say around 6 here because I do think that the running game is stronger than it was during the early portion of last season, and Chicago is a good running back matchup as well here, so I do think that his floor, that being Craig Reynolds, is closer to 6 to 8 fantasy points than it is between 4 to 6 fantasy points in this matchup. He will get utilized to some extent. It is not going to be 100% Jahmyr Gibbs taking all of the David Montgomery work. I can tell you that. And I think that Craig Reynolds has a decent shot at a touchdown in this matchup on this offense. And I'm willing to take that shot at a certain point in my rankings, and I'm pretty bold about it. I understand that, but hey, he's one of my love of the week. You don't have to believe in it. That's absolutely okay, and hopefully you're not in a situation where you're even really having to think about that. Then we've got Tyler Algier here going up against the New York Giants. The New York Giants are in shambles. Atlanta is starting Michael Penix Jr. for his first time, pick number 8 of this most recent draft, 2024 draft, and will probably want to ease Michael Penix into things in his first matchup as an NFL pro. This was already a run-first, run-heavy matchup against the New York Giants. Algier is one of the top plays out of the guys who you do not want to play, and that has already started really by about the running back 26 there, we'll say, with my fades, that you're hoping you got something better than these guys, but maybe you don't. Tyler Algier has a chance, much like Justice Hill, who I had very high up last week, right about in this same spot in my rankings, came through against, I think that was also against the Giants, right? So it's just been one of those matchups where the backups can get on the field as the starters finish doing their job. A little less likely that Atlanta just gets in such a position where it's all Algier to shut out like the fourth quarter or anything like that, but he should find some good running lanes while he's got his opportunities throughout the game. And then we've got Antonio Gibson as an extension of, I meant to say it when I talked about Ramondre Stevenson, my that love of the week really extended. I did talk about that a little bit. Extended to both New England Patriots running backs. Antonio Gibson, the receiving back here against Buffalo, could end up getting schemed into this game a little bit more than he normally does for New England, or just find more success with the opportunities that he is given, as that is an area of the field that Buffalo just could give two hoots about. They do not mind players receiving the ball within about 3 yards or so of the line of scrimmage. They'll allow that all day. So there you go. These are my rankings for Week 16 of the 2024 season, semifinals for a lot of us, baby. Let's go. First week for me of my finals 2-week matchup. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Quarterbacks, tight ends video will come out in the morning. I will be going live Thursday. I will be going live Saturday morning. I will be going live Sunday morning, Saturday night possible, and then next week a bunch as well. Take care. Peace out. This video did not end up being short, but we tried. Bye-bye.